You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the latest episode of Star Trek Picard, The Bounty. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going?
And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to follow The Secrets of Star Trek in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, on your favorite podcast app, or at YouTube, where you can watch us. And be sure to hit the bell to get notifications and subscribe to the channel. Stick around to the end. We have some more great listener feedback. And another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy would be the Raising the Bets. That's a show I do with my wife, Melanie, is what I was trying to say. And you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/bets. I'm so excited to talk about this episode that I'm leaping ahead. But
is your and your wife's podcast articular? Is it the Raising the Bets, or is it just Raising the Bets?
It's just Raising the Bets. I just was stumbling over my words because I'm so excited.
Okay. You're combining two sentences into one.
Yes, I was. So let's get to talking about The Bounty. And Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happened?
This week, in a very special television event, we get a crossover episode between the Rafi Musiker show and the Captain Picard show. And the gang's all here. All of the Next Gen main characters are back together. The Titan is evading capture by Starfleet, so Vadic broadens her search to Picard's associates to try to find him. Beverly announces that Jack's visions are caused by Aromatic Syndrome, the genetic disease that killed Picard at the end of Season 1. Worf and Rafi beam on board and tell Picard what they've learned about the theft from Daystrom Station. They then go to the station and use the AI key to get Riker, Worf, and Rafi inside, but Starfleet shows up and the Titan is forced to flee. They go to the Fleet Museum where they make contact with Geordi LaForge. Geordi is now a family man who wants to help but is afraid to. His hand is forced when Jack and Geordi's daughter Sydney steal the cloaking device from a Klingon ship at the museum and install it on the Titan because, of course, you leave sensitive treaty-bound devices like cloaking devices sitting around in a museum. And they need Geordi to manage the cloaking device, which they then use to sneak back to Daystrom Station. Inside, Riker, Worf, and Rafi have discovered that the station's security system is being run by a Soong-type android that looks like an older, more human version of Data. It has Data's memories as well as those of Lore, B4, and Lal. And it tries to communicate with our heroes with holograms, including one of Moriarty. They realize that the android has the knowledge they need about what was stolen by the Changelings, but when the others beam out, Riker is left behind. On board the Titan, the android is reactivated, but it's suffering from multiple personality disorder. However, it reveals what the Changelings stole, the human remains of Jean-Luc Picard. Meanwhile, Riker is taken aboard the Shrike, where Vadic reveals that she has Deanna as her prisoner. So with Picard, Riker, Data, Worf, Geordi, Beverly, and Deanna in this episode, the Next Gen cast is finally fully engaged. The end.
Yes. Okay, I'll go with that, because I brought up last time Wesley's not in, but Wesley wasn't in all 7 seasons. So
he wasn't in all 7. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with that. All right. So before we get into talking about that things,
Wesley doesn't count.
Yeah. Poor Will. So Father Cory, what did you think of this episode?
I enjoyed it. It was well, there'll be some feedback where this was kind of a filler episode, kind of a bridge episode to kind of get the final run, and I do kind of agree with that. But I enjoyed it well enough, and then we will, fair warning to our listeners, if you're not ship geeks, there will be a sizable chunk of this podcast you will probably skip. But we'll get to that geekery when the time comes.
Yep. Jimmy, thoughts?
I enjoyed it. It had some flaws. There was like one sequence in it where we're intercutting between the station and the Daystrom Station and the Titan, and they're playing this romantic music and using this romantic intercutting. It's not real romance, but it's this warm, fuzzy kind of feeling as Alton Inigo Sung is making a dramatic voiceover about evolution and life and giving back and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, I see what you're doing here. Can I just get on with the plot now?
Yeah.
So it had some flaws, but it was enjoyable. It had some really nice moments. There's a great moment where Captain Shaw gets to meet Geordi LaForge, and he's totally geeking out.
Yeah,
he's like so impressed with
as a former engineer. Yeah,
as a former engineer with getting to meet Geordi LaForge. It's like he's just totally starstruck by LaForge, which is awesome. And LaForge is talking about the state of the Titan, and LaForge says, you're spewing fumes through layers of 21st century duct tape. And I checked, he does say 21st century duct tape. And it's like, I think that's a line misread. I think he meant to say 24th century duct tape, because even though they're in the 25th century now, and the Titan has parts that are like 20 years old, but I don't think anything goes back to the 2000s in it.
Yeah.
But Geordi says, you're spewing fumes through layers of 21st century duct tape. And Shaw says, yeah, it's been a weird week. And
that was a good line. It's been a weird week. It's a weird line, though, like 24th century duct tape. Like, would you say, oh, your Mustang is having troubles, you're spewing fumes through 21st century linen, like, or, some ancient fabric or something? It's kind of a weird, because I know they're trying to relate to a 21st century audience, but kind of a weird line.
I assume they'll be using duct tape in the 24th century. So
it'll last forever, I guess.
It'll be then what it is now. It's like, oh, you can fix everything with either duct tape or WD-40.
Yep.
You got a leak in your warp core? Slap some duct tape on that sucker. So, we have Vadic, and they're chasing down the Titan throughout this. I mean, there's actually, I didn't give my impression. Sorry, I should do that. I got distracted by duct tape, and I
There's
agree.
nothing it can't do.
Yeah, there is nothing it can't do. And hopefully, it can fix my speaking. I agree in general. This was not the best episode. I mean, it's not a bad episode. It does feel like this is setting us up for the closeout, but there were parts of this that, just as a Star Trek fan, were fan service, that I just kind of paused on a regular basis going, oh, look, that's so fun. And I think it kind of made up for any deficiencies in plotting or characterization that might have been there, or things that were we always had to get to Daystrom and figure out what was missing, and they spent a whole episode doing that. And so, to compensate for spending so much time of a limited season, they gave us some fun fan service in it, and that's how I approach it. Including
one piece of fan service that I'm sure we'll get to that I think is rather controversial.
I agree. Yeah, that should be interesting. So we have this scene where, one thing I want to bring up first with the strike and Vadic. Changelings used to not kill each other, right? That was like a violent thing. Changing, killing each. These changelings, anyway, don't seem to have the same reluctance. Yeah,
there's a moment early on where Vadic is talking to her crew, whose faces we still have never seen. They're shrouded, and they're wearing masks, and they talk in this clicking language. And she's talking to them, and one of them is giving her some pushback, saying things aren't going so well for us. And he's about to say, he's in the process of saying, maybe we need new leadership, when Vadic gives a signal, like a nod to another crew member, who then vaporizes the first one. Mm-hmm. I don't think Vadic, at least, I mean, I could be wrong, but the evidence at this point, I think, suggests that Vadic and her crew are not true changelings. Vadic, I mean, number one, there's the fact they kill each other but also Vadic's hand thing, where she cuts off her hand to communicate. That seems weird for true changelings. But then there's this line where Riker, after Riker is brought aboard the Shrike at the end of the episode, he turns to one of her crew members and says, "How much of that goo did they pour into you?" And so I'm thinking that Vadic and her crew may not be true changelings, but are like changeling solid hybrids of some kind.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we see that, when she is communicating with whoever her handler is, whoever her
handler.
Yeah. I didn't intend the pun. I'll accept it. I'll take it.
It's a good pun.
It was totally not intended. But when she's talking to her superior, he's like, "You're all expendable." And again, for true changelings, that would never be said.
Yeah.
They would rather back off and go do another tack at doing what they're trying to do than lose any of their own.
Yeah, and in fact, the female changeling told Wei-Yun in Deep Space Nine that the war with the Alpha Quadrant is a low priority for the changelings, that they would give up any ambitions in the Alpha Quadrant if it meant getting Odo back. And Odo and his survival is more important than the entire Alpha Quadrant.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Vadic does give a speech about, vengeance against the Federation, and the implication is vengeance for the virus that affected the Great Link, and the loss of the war, and we have to have vengeance before we can have peace. But maybe it's not the Dominion who wants vengeance for something. Maybe it's somebody else who also has reasons to seek revenge.
Well, and we know that this is a spin-off group from the Changelings. They've said that fairly early on, that this is a rebel group. They're not responding to the Great Link. They're on their own.
Yeah. So maybe, so it could be, in that sense, there's also possible they could just be changelings who just have a different attitude.
And we know that they are changelings, including going into up through the ranks of the Federation. Because she says that some of their siblings, their comrades, are trapped in human form.
Vadic also, we get to see her change, because initially she is the guard that's brutalizing Riker, and then she transforms into Vadic, which is a great turn. The actress is really nice as soon as she becomes Vadic. It's like, hi there.
Suitably creepy. So, switching gears, what do you think of this reveal that Jack, his visions, Beverly diagnoses them as Aromatic Syndrome, which is the disease that Picard has? He
may or may not have Aromatic Syndrome, but I don't buy that that's the full story. Having Aromatic Syndrome does not turn you into a magical killing machine. It does not give you audible hallucinations of your mother saying, "Find me." Right. So I think this is Changeling Beverly, who has realized what's going on with Jack and is using the Aromatic Syndrome story as a cover. He may have it, he may not, but she's using it as a cover, and she gave him medicine ostensibly to treat the Aromatic Syndrome, and she says it'll help control his hallucinations. Okay, so she's given him medicine to interfere with his visions that are telling him to make contact.
What if the Beverly, if Beverly is indeed a changeling here, what if the Beverly changeling is the female changeling from DS9 in opposition to Vadic's terrorist faction?
That would be fascinating, and I think Salome Jens is still alive, so they could have her reprise the role.
Yeah, that would be. I kind of like that idea. I would like that.
Yeah, you would think that Beverly would be aware of this syndrome possibly being passed down to Jack, like from the moment she realized that she was pregnant with him. The second she realized she was going to have Picard's son, she would realize that there's a chance that this could be a genetic.
Well, thing. Did Picard always know he had Aromatic Syndrome?
No. They first introduced the idea in the season finale of Next Gen, at the end of season 7, where he's having that alternate future. Yep. And in the alternate future, he has Aromatic Syndrome. So that's where he learned about it. But he would have known by the time, and Beverly would have known by the time she became pregnant with Jack.
Right. That's true. That happened essentially right after that. So okay.
Yeah, well, after a few movies.
Yeah.
Well, right.
After all that happened from All Good Things, he was scanned, and you've got this little thing in your brain that could eventually become this.
Yeah, that happened in All Good Things.
And they kind of wave their hand at the idea that it progresses differently in different people, and so that's why Jack got it earlier than Picard ever did.
Yeah. Either way, she would be scanning him on a regular basis to make sure that it isn't setting in, and when it does start setting in, she could act on it very quickly.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Jack has just been given a terminal diagnosis, and he's initially having some trouble dealing with it. And he's like, if only you were as good at passing on genetics as you are wisdom, to his father. And he has this line about, maybe I was doomed before I was even born. And I'm like, Jack, that's all of us. We're all doomed before we're even born. We're all gonna die, you included.
Right. In fact, it kind of comes up again in this episode, this idea that we're all gonna die. He says in that line, my mother thought to protect me from being collateral damage in the life of Jean-Luc Picard by hiding him away. The irony is, I was doomed by you before I was born. You know, that in that sense, it is. I suppose when you're young, you know, you're in your early 20s, you think you're immortal. And so the idea of your mortality, even though it's real for all of us, is remote, I guess. But good to be reminded of that.
I had lessons in my early 20s that, I mean, when my wife died at age 27, okay, nobody is guaranteed a time.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I moved out to California for work, and I had a third story apartment. And there was this little nest of robins on my balcony, and I saw them try to raise eggs multiple times, and it's like, nobody is guaranteed a time.
Right, including the robins. So we get the crossover episode we've all been looking forward to, the Rafi Picard crossover, and so Rafi and Worf show up. Titan is orbiting this star, and Rafi and Worf beam aboard. Where'd they beam aboard from?
Well, I've seen this commented on. Obviously, they apparently took the La Sirena, but they don't mention it. And who knows where it is?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, before we go there, we probably want to comment for just a second on Vadik's broadening her search to all of Picard's known associates, all of his colleagues, all of his friends. She doesn't know if he has any family, but if he has family, it includes them, because he's going to turn to someone is her idea, and we want to be there first. And that's apparently how she gets Deanna.
Yeah.
So they don't make that explicit, but apparently she scooped up Deanna as part of the Get Picard's associates.
Right.
If that's really Deanna. I mean, with Changelings, you never know. But yeah.
One thing I will object to, you both keep saying crossover. No, this is a reverse spinoff. Instead of a new series spinning off of an old one, this is two series spinning into one. So this is not a crossover, because I don't think they're going to split these out again.
No, I doubt they will, but it's just paying off a joke that I've been doing in the recaps, because
I know
when they introduced Rafi in this season, it's like she's in her own show. She's not interacting with anybody else. And so I started the idea of the Rafi Musiker show, and I've just been playing it out. So in the episode where she wasn't in it at all, I said she's on mid-season hiatus. And so now it's like I'm describing it as a crossover.
Well, I'm not objecting to that. I'm saying that they've taken the two shows and they merged it back into one.
Yeah.
Yep. So speaking of the La Sirena,
guess the ratings for the Rafi Musiker show weren't big enough to support it on its own, so they had to fold it back in.
Pretty much.
So speaking of the La Sirena, didn't that have a cloaking device too? That could have come in handy at some point when they needed a cloaking device. But let's just forget that because we wanted to do this other thing. So we'll get to that.
I do like when they show up that that Worf knows to the day how long it's been since he saw Picard and says, other than your infrequent communications, an annual bottle of sour mead.
People in this season keep dissing Picard's wine.
Yeah.
I mean, is this like the Gallo of French wines now? That's Chateau Picard?
And Picard is like, what? And Riker says, Chateau Picard. And Worf says, it is quite tart, sir.
Klingon blood wine must be sweet as fruit punch, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
So, they come up with the idea.
Klingons have high A1C.
Yeah, that's right. They need lots of glucose for their aggressiveness. They decide they need to break into Daystrom. So Picard says, so we must burgle the very institution hunting us. And Riker says, excellent use of the word burgle, Admiral.
Oh, I love Shaw's reaction too, where he kind of smiles and kind of nods and agrees.
I just thought that was hysterical. Like, it was out of nowhere. Like, this very serious situation. Excellent use of the word burgle, Admiral. Then we also have this thing where like Seven shows up and, Rafi and Seven had this relationship that's apparently over, and Worf tries to make it sound okay that Seven and Rafi are going on this dangerous mission together.
I love how, I mean, I would have been happy for them to just ignore the relationship, but they treat it very lightly and move past it very rapidly. And there's fun dialogue as they do it, because Worf stumbles into this scene where they're talking and they're about to go to Daystrom Station, and he thinks Seven is going with them. Yeah. And so he's trying to put a good face on things, and he says, accompanying lovers into battle can be therapeutic. I've done it many times. And Seven says, I'm not going. And he says, that is a relief. I was practicing deceit. Breakups on my world rarely end without bloodshed.
Well, and all of us fans are thinking about the time he went into the mission with
Jadzia.
Jadzia, yes. Yep. That's not a good idea. So they get to Daystrom, and these other ships are there. They're apparently tracking Titan.
We should comment on the line that's in the trailers, that because as they're about to beam on to Daystrom Station, Worf makes this comment about, I prefer pacifism now, and Riker says, we're all gonna die. and it's clear that this is not, and fans were so upset about this, about Worf being a pacifist, and it's clear he's not a pacifist.
Klingon pacifism is not the same thing.
Yeah, this is being played as a joke.
Well, and Riker even had commented that if this doesn't work, we'll need some Klingon offense. And and that's where he says, I prefer pacifism to violence now.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, I prefer it. It's not like he's not willing to use violence.
Yeah. So the one nice thing is when they are at Daystrom and these starships are there, they show up to, protect it and get the Titan, is they mention that these particular ships have traceable phasers. When they hit you, it's like a tag, and they can track the tag. I'm like, that's a brilliant technology. That's why, yes, you should have technology like this where you can tag a ship so you can follow it if you ever need to. That's a great idea. So I like that. The Escalon class starships.
Also, I like when they get into Daystrom, they use the chip that they got from the Vulcan gangster. And there's kind of a moment where they're not sure if it's going to work, but then it does. And I like what the AI security system says, after it recognizes their fake credentials. It says, thank you. Have a wonderful day. And please, no food or beverages in the research area.
Yeah.
No flash photography. They do say, Section 31 is hiding all the good stuff here on Daystrom. And again, another mention of Section 31, the most secret organization that everyone's heard of.
Dom, that ship has sailed.
I know. It just cracks me up because I love how much of a big deal they made of it being secret in DS9.
But it was at the time, and after the Dominion War, it came to light. Because they were pivotal in the Dominion War. And they were both the solution. They were both of the solutions to the problem of the Great Link. They created the virus, they infected the Great Link, and then they gave him the cure.
Yeah.
Unwillingly, but they gave him the cure. So it's natural that high-ranking Starfleet officers will know who they are now.
That's true.
And even Captain Sisko, when he first heard about him, I mean, he did some checking and he got these ambiguous responses where the Glomar responses effectively, I can either confirm or deny that Section 31 exists. So I don't see any problem when Worf says Section 31's hiding its stuff here, and Riker's like, what? Starfleet intelligence. And he's like, I know who they are. I meant what in another sense.
Right. So they are hiding all the good stuff there, including a copy of the Genesis device.
Here we go. Yeah. That's fine.
Tribbles.
Genetically modified tribbles that are big and will attack.
It's scary. Mm-hmm. Yeah, big teeth. And James T. Kirk's body. And that's the one or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's James T. Kirk's, whether it's his body or whether it's him in stasis. Right. Is ambiguous.
Okay.
They show us this screen, and I've seen some people who've tried to do blow-ups of the screen. Apparently, so what we see is an image that looks like an X-ray of his skeleton, but it's got some medical readings around it, and it's got a biography of him at the bottom, and the biography is apparently lifted from someone's webpage. And it has mistaken dates for the 5-year mission and stuff. But someone who's blown it up and tried to read it, even though it's fuzzy, has said that there's an allusion to him being critically injured at the end of Generations, not killed, but critically injured. And so the death of Kirk has always been controversial because even though he dies heroically at the end of the movie Star Trek Generations, it's been felt that, originally Malcolm McDowell was going to kill him. And then they didn't like the way that was working, so they reshot it, and he falls off of a bridge, basically, and dies at the foot of a mountain, and with only Picard there. And then Picard apparently single-handedly lugs his body up to the top of the mountain and puts it under rocks, and apparently that was a signal for here's where to pick it up, Section 31 guys. Because now it's in Daystrom Station, and it's not clear if he's meant to be alive or dead. Now William Shatner wrote or hired someone to ghostwrite for him some Star Trek novels in which Kirk is brought back from the dead by Borg implants or something like that. I don't know the details. I haven't read them. Yeah. But in William Shatner's Shatnerverse Star Trek novels, Kirk does come back from the dead, and this may be a nod to that. But I think it's a little risky as a piece of fan service, because it's unlikely they're going to pay this off at any time in the near future, and William Shatner himself is probably unavailable to reprise the part. He's like 92 years old. And so people can look at this as, it's an attempt to be clever and cute and raise possibilities, but because otherwise, why would you want the body in this secret facility? It should be in an ordinary grave in Arlington Cemetery or something, or Space Arlington Cemetery, where people can come and honor it. So you can look at this as a kind of further cheapening of Kirk's already controversial death. So
I had an idea, and bear with me for a second. So the CBS and Paramount have been having this terrible trouble trying to make more Kelvin timeline Trek movies, trying to get the whole cast together and all that stuff like that. What if it's not Shatner Kirk, but Pine Kirk?
Chris Pine Kirk has been brought
from
over
the alternate timeline.
and is now dead. Okay, I'm on board with that.
Or in stasis, or in some kind of stasis. Yeah, where
as long as it stops him from making more movies, I'm good with it.
Well, just don't let J.J. Abrams make them.
I'm also fine with Section 31 thinking for some reason they need Kirk's body. I mean, because we're gonna talk about the big MacGuffin hunt that's gonna be the rest of the series here shortly. Yes. That Section 31 had that is very related to that. So, I don't have a problem with it that maybe they think there was something because he went through the Nexus or who knows what and why that, or just because he cheated death so many times and he need to be studied, or maybe. Who knows? The head of Section 31, Bashir, is a fanboy of Kirk, and so he wanted his body here. I don't know.
Well, it is funny that DS9 episode where they end up on the Trouble with Tribbles episode, where he was
Trials and Tribulations.
Trials, yeah, he was kind of fanboying over Kirk. Like, is that Kirk? Is that Kirk? I do remember that.
Also want to mention a couple other things that you just kind of see in the background very quickly. There's a Borg vinculum, which we saw in Prodigy recently. And then there's the Thalaron generator from Nemesis, the device that wiped out the Senate, the Romulan Senate.
Right. And the Genesis device. I don't want to breeze past that. Too. That was there too. So that's super.
You can go on I can't remember who it is, but you can go on Twitter and they showed behind the scenes where they actually created it and had it behind the set. And the thing's 6 foot tall or better. I mean, it's huge and it looks really cool.
Someone put the links on our Discord. So if you go to our Discord at sqpn.com/Discord, you can find the links there.
I want a little 2 foot tabletop model because it looks really cool. It's all lit up with LEDs and
with the smoke and everything.
Just don't put any proto matter in it.
Exactly.
Right. Bring back my dead dog. So essentially Daystrom station is Starfleet's Area 51, right? The warehouse of fantastic things, or Warehouse 13, which was a fun series
with both it and the Fleet Museum have remarkably lax security.
Yes,
you can get into them and take stuff out of them far more easily than should be the case for major military bases, especially secret classified ones,
which should be crawling with guards, like living guards. But okay. Yeah. So let's talk about the AI security system that it turns out, I think, Jimmy, you had predicted that it would be Data or Lore.
Well, I predicted it would be Moriarty, and Moriarty is part of it because Moriarty is a holographic projection created by Data, who is the security system, which is implausible and has to be very recent because so the android that they find, which is not in a perfect functioning state, it's basically sitting there, was created by Alton Inigo Sung, who we met in season 1 of Picard. And after he gave, and he had been preparing a body for himself, which he then gave to Picard to enable Picard to become a robot. And so Picard is a toaster now, but now he doesn't have a body. And so to transfer his own consciousness into, so he started building a new one. And then in the romantic voiceover they give us, he's explaining about, he decided evolution is not about survival, it's about adding something. And I'm going, no. Dude, evolution is about survival by means of genetic replication. And it doesn't automatically involve adding anything. It may involve subtracting stuff, because what it's really about is adapting to environmental conditions. And through random processes, those adaptations may be either additions or subtractions or lateral changes. But it's all about adapting to environmental conditions so you can survive. And your genes want to survive. That is what evolution, that's the whole story with evolution, dude. But he has this magical, non-scientific understanding of evolution about its adding things. So he decided to build a new robot body that he would put the memories of Data, Lal, B4, Lore, and himself in. And only it didn't work. And so it has these conflicting personalities that are partitioned from each other. and because he wanted to integrate them into one new, better personality. And it didn't work, so the personalities aren't interacting properly. And then he died, and then Section 31 classified all his research and took the android. And in the last 2 years, apparently, during the course of season 2, because he hadn't done any of this yet before the end of season 1. So this is all in the last, year and a half, maybe, from Star Trek perspective. He built this thing, he died, they scooped it up and immediately made it their security system.
Yep. Well, somebody said, hey, what's the best AI security? Yeah.
The misfunctioning android with multiple personality disorder, one of which is evil. That's what you want to make your security system? I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, not just as one of them evil, but one of them is like a 5-year-old.
Yeah, right. One of them's a 5-year-old. You can trick the 5-year-old, or you can bribe the evil one, or he'll spill your secrets for fun.
Well, you've given him access to a station full of dangerous weapons of mass destruction, like the Genesis device. Yeah,
apparently they don't have bootloaders in the 25th century either for multi-boot systems.
Could you boot data for me, please? Yeah. So meanwhile, and then of course, Starfleet, as you mentioned, shows up. The Titan has to hit the road, otherwise they're going to get tagged. And so they go to the Fleet Space Museum just down the street because Picard wants to get Geordi's help, figure out how to get back onto Daystrom. So Geordi's there. He's the Commodore in charge of the Fleet Space Museum, and he's his other daughter, Alondra, who now
is his bio daughter in real life.
Is what's his name? LeVar Burton's actual daughter. Yes. Mm-hmm. They beam aboard. He's not exactly welcoming them with open arms. I felt like the Geordi in this is not, is kind of mischaracterized. He's different. He's unreasonably overprotective of Sydney. She's a Starfleet officer with a duty to perform, and he's like negotiating to get her off the Titan, and then he'll help them or something. It's kind of it's
no,
like,
it wasn't even that. He just wanted her off the Titan and protected. Yeah. He wasn't going to help him. This is part of their thing. This is 20 years later, and we're seeing all these characters in new contexts. Geordi is not the helpful gung-ho subordinate that he was in Next Gen. He's a family man now. He has different priorities. He needs to protect his family.
And he's a bureaucrat now. He talks. The first thing he says, I've got 3 letters that I've written to the fleet against, taking, or to Starfleet against taking all the fleet and having all in one place. And he's more worried about the paperwork he's been doing than helping them.
Yeah. Right. He also, and part of this is also because of, it's a request from LeVar Burton, because in Next Gen, he had a Samantha Carter syndrome going on where every woman he meets, there's a problem.
Right.
And so his character developed this reputation of being shy around women. He's not the womanizer that Riker is.
Right.
And so LeVar Burton resented the fact that his character was portrayed as clumsy around women. And he wanted it to be paid off as he becomes a successful family man, to show that's not fundamentally who he is. He's not Mr. Clumsy around women. He can have a successful relationship and get married and have daughters who he loves and cares about very much, and that are big items on his priority list.
Right. Okay. So let's get to the part of the show where we discuss all of the awesome ships that are at the Fleet Museum. So there's the Defiant.
I just want to make it clear, ship design is not my thing. I did enjoy seeing, some of these famous ships.
Yeah.
I thought it's remarkable. Okay, guys, there really aren't more, why is it all of them except the New Jersey I know about? So I think they could have balanced it a little bit differently. Jack, it turns out, is a total ship geek. He really loves
one of us.
He really loves the Constitution class starships. Even though he's not a Starfleet guy, he loves the ship. So it's okay. I could accept that. He's just like, okay, Jack is a ship geek. He's like Dom and Father Cory. It's not my thing, but it's fine for him.
Yep.
So
having said that, I'll let you guys geek out.
Thank
you.
you.
This is the Defiant A, obviously the second Defiant, the Sao Paulo that became the second Defiant, which we discussed in Discord whether it had a cloaking device that they should have stolen instead of the other one from the Klingons. But apparently
that was
Sao
on loan
Paulo,
from the Romulans.
Yeah,
yes.
Right.
And it was the first Defiant.
Yeah. And so the second one never got another cloaking device.
There's no evidence, at least in canon, that any of the other Defiant class ships got a cloaking device, just the original Defiant. Because there was a question on Discord, why didn't they take the cloaking device from the Defiant, which would have been a much more recent model of cloaking device, and Romulan,
and compatible with
and much more compatible with Federation technology versus the one from the HMS Bounty, which is one of the ships, the ship that was used in the search for whales with its cloaking device. That's the one they ended up taking.
I thought for sure they were going to take the Bounty itself. They were going to take the Bird of Prey.
Yeah, I thought that too, but they didn't. They just took the cloaking device, which is actually a callback to the second appearance of the cloaking device in the original series in the Enterprise incident. So they learn about the cloaking device in Balance of Terror.
Yep.
And then a season or two later, they revisit the concept. And now that the Federation knows about the cloaking device, they send Kirk to steal one. And he gets on board the Romulan ship made up as a Romulan. He steals their cloaking device. He brings it. It's the same prop as Nomad, just turned the other way up. And he brings it back to the Enterprise. Scotty installs it in the Enterprise cloaks. So they've established that these are portable devices that are sufficiently compatible with Federation technology. You can make them work.
Yeah. Yep. And they called the episode Bounty. I'm like, oh yes, they're going to take it, but they didn't.
I didn't see that. I saw it's like a bounty hunt, although there's no bounty hunting in it.
Yeah, the title is two references. There's the crew is wanted, the crew of the Titan is wanted, but then there's also the HMS Bounty, which we still get to use, we still get to see, and they still use parts of it. So
also some other ships. There's the Enterprise A, so the refit Enterprise, the New Jersey, which is an original Constitution class, from TOS. This is an important discussion.
we need to be clear about a couple things. The Enterprise A is not a refit. That was a new ship that was built after the original Enterprise refit was destroyed over the Genesis planet.
Right.
No, that's right. Search for Spock.
No, but I mean, they didn't get the ship until the
ship was built. The A was built after, but that was a new ship.
Yeah.
But then we have the Constitution class New Jersey, and this first of all is a payoff of a 30-year-old throwaway line from the TNG episode Relics, which is the Scotty episode. Where Scotty's he's drunk and he's on the holodeck version of the original Enterprise bridge. Picard walks in and he says, "Oh, Constitution class." Scotty's, "Oh, you're familiar with them?" "Oh, yes, there's one in the Fleet Museum."
Oh, okay.
And this pays off that line.
Okay.
And now there's controversy because this is the TOS style Constitution class, not the Strange New Worlds class. In my opinion, in Star Trek, refits means a ship of thesis issue, where you could just completely tear the ship apart and rebuild it, and it's just a refit.
Okay, but that's a different thing than it looks like the TOS version Enterprise looks like that.
Yeah.
Whereas in Strange New Worlds, we've changed, and Discovery, we've changed the past and things look differently. I was surprised that they didn't use a ship that looked like the Strange New Worlds because we've established this new continuity.
Yeah, but it's not a new continuity. It's in Strange New Worlds. It's just a new visualization. And you can harmonize it by saying after Captain Pike's time, they do a refit, and it'll look like Kirk's Enterprise. And so they want the nostalgia of it looks like Kirk's Enterprise, so that's what they show us. And beyond that, one should just use the MST3K mantra, repeat after me. It's just a show. I should really just relax. But what's notable about the New Jersey, other than the fact we've never heard of it, is it's named the New Jersey, and its registry number is NCC 1975. And these are references to the showrunner, Terry Matalas, who is from New Jersey and was born in 1975.
Yeah.
Yep. And
so that was my point on the refit is all you have to do is say, well, they refit the ship between here and here, and that's why it looks different.
So the other one we see, of course, is Voyager, and that's causes Seven to have some nostalgia because that's her ship where she was reborn, as she says, and she's talking to Jack. Yeah,
and there's that classic bottom view where you see the deflector dish, and it's the underside of the saucer section.
Right. And Jack and Seven have this conversation where
I should also mention, even though I'm not a ship geek, I have been listening to Ship Geeks, and they point out that we also see an NX-01 refit. The NX-01 refit was planned for the 5th season of Enterprise, which never got made. And so this would suggest that that's likely the NX-01, that's likely the original Enterprise that then did get refit and continued to have adventures that we never saw on screen.
Yep.
So on Jack and Seven's conversation, they have this, about crew being family, starship family, and connection. And Jack says here, we all long for connection, but we're all just a little bit alone, stars in the same galaxy, but light years between us, which is interesting given that in his previous conversation with Picard, he's telling Picard, I don't need connection. So something is switched here.
I think this is, he realizes it, that he does want the connection of family and all that, but he's fighting against it because it's Picard. I think it's just that simple, that this isn't a mistake in writing or anything like that. He's rebelling against the idea of being Picard's son, but he realizes he needs that connection too.
His previous comments can be taken as Father Cory indicates, in the sense of, I don't need connections means I don't want a connection with you.
Exactly. Right. And this is him kind of, I think by having him say this here, it's him highlighting that.
And they've also, it's part of his character arc. They've been developing his character. He's much less antisocial than he was when he started out. After the conversation with Riker and Picard, if I recall correctly, a few episodes ago about, hey, all these people don't like you because they're putting their lives on the line for you and you're being a jerk to them. You could be a little bit nicer. He's been making an obvious effort to be nicer.
It's true. To
the point that he gets Geordi's attention about how nice he's being to his daughter.
But back off, Picard.
there are a bunch of other little other ships that you could kind of see in the background. Jimmy mentioned the NX-01 refit. The Excelsior is there. Of course, we knew that was in the closing credits. The Excelsior at NCC 2000 was there. There was a Nebula class, which was one of the ships the Farragut was one of the ships that rescued the Enterprise crew in Generations. There was a ship of the same class as the Stargazer, but apparently not the Stargazer, because Picard would have said something if it was there.
Plus, the Stargazer is still in service. We saw.
Yeah, but that's a new Stargazer.
Oh, the
Picard
original
Stargazer.
The
original Stargazer.
Yeah.
A Romulan bird of prey. And then, of course, there was other Klingon ships and many other little ships I really couldn't see clearly.
Klingon battlecruiser, yeah. Yep.
So I've been to the USS Nimitz Fleet Museum here in San Diego, and you can get on it and walk around it, and so I assume that's what happens here. Geordi mentions thousands of people come to see these ships. I assume they don't just fly around and look at them from the outside. It's like another museum, naval museum, where you can get on board and take tours. And so, I've been to one of these. The Nimitz was, a aircraft carrier, a very famous one. It's now parked in San Diego Harbor. And it's interesting to go see. It's really cramped in there, for all the men who served on it. And there are no cloaking devices or weapons left inside. And so I find it implausible that they wouldn't. I'm sure that you can go on these ships and they would have, basic computers, given the ubiquity of computers in the 25th century, but they should have stripped out everything of value before turning it into a museum.
By the way, Jimmy, did you mean the Midway?
The Midway. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Because it's in service. Yeah.
Because last time I was in San Diego, I was able to see it, and then Jimmy and I had a nice lunch afterwards.
Yeah.
After I did the tour of the Midway. So
nice. So I did want to go back and comment on Riker kind of figuring out the puzzle of Moriarty and the AI security system. Yeah. Because they're hearing this noise over the comm system, and he determines that it's musical notes. He's a musician, right?
He's apparently got, I don't know if it's perfect pitch, but he can recognize a musical note and name what it is by hearing it. Yeah. And so he's identifying these individual notes. Then they see a holographic raven fly up to them. Then Moriarty appears and menaces them. And then Riker, from the scattered notes, because we don't hear enough to identify the melody, it's just a note every so often. Riker realizes it's Pop Goes the Weasel, which is the tune that Data was attempting to hum in Encounter at Farpoint on the holodeck when we first meet when the two of them first meet each other. And Data was having this, even though, dude, you've got a chip. You can make, just pucker your lips and play whistling noises. This shouldn't be a problem for an Android. It's not a problem for a phone now. But Data's having trouble whistling, and he's doing Pop Goes the Weasel, but doing it very badly. And Riker finally goes, and Data says, "Marvelous." Mm-hmm. And so Riker in this episode goes, and Moriarty says, "Marvelous." And Riker has pieced together that this is really Data, because Pop Goes the Weasel, he dreamed of ravens, he dreamed about fighting Moriarty as Sherlock Holmes. All of these elements put together say Data, only he's not communicating in a straightforward way. So this must be an attempt at communication in a non-straightforward way.
Yes.
And by the way, before we have any bird geeks or bird brains, maybe you can call them,
maybe we should.
Crow. It's a crow, not a raven.
Yeah. So we talked about Sydney and Jack getting together, coming up with the idea of stealing the cloaking device from the Bounty. And installing it. And of course they can't get it installed themselves. Geordi has to show up and save the day, because Geordi is like Scotty, the great engineer who can do magic with the ships.
With 21st century duct tape.
Right. And that's the scene where Geordi gets a little salty with Jack, like, back off.
Stay away from my daughter.
And Sydney does the dad. You embarrassing
Jack's
me.
Just like, don't look at me.
Oh, now that's an idea.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, back at Daystrom, the guards have finally shown up. And so Riker ends up sacrificing himself so that Rafi, Worf, and the android, previously known as Data, can beam away.
Yeah, he goes to engage with the guards in a firefight, and they strike him with a transport inhibitor. It goes by visually fast, and the dialogue explaining it afterwards goes by really fast, but we see this force field like glow around Riker's body, and that's the transport inhibitor grabbing him. And then when they beam back, either Worf or Rafi has a line about transport inhibitor stopped him from coming with us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's kind of it almost looked like a blow dart, like you see in the
right
movies where the African tribals have blow dart. That's kind of what it looks like. And then you see the little glow around him.
So Worf promises to bring Riker home and says, quote, "And fearful be the god or man or beast that stands in my way." A typical Worf Klingon line.
Bluster.
bluster.
The Klingons did kill their own gods, so that fits with Klingon mythology.
Right. Because he would normally, if it was human, say, God help the person who stands in my way, but he couldn't say that. Jack admits to Picard to being a bit cocky, which is funny because that's a lot like Picard was when he was younger. Remember that whole thing?
Yep.
When he admits being a bit cocky, Picard says, a bit?
Yeah. Picard, you were a bit cocky when he took on the Nausicaans.
Yeah, he got that artificial heart. Remember that?
Yes. Now he's artificial everything. So you mentioned that the new Data, the new android, Sung designed it to age and to look more human, like that whole thing, just to explain why Brent Spiner doesn't look like he does 35 years ago.
And also why he doesn't have to put on so much, yellow
gold
glitter pancake makeup.
Yep.
Well, of course, they, instead of calling it like Data or something like that, they call him M510, Android M510.
Right. And
for the moment, he'll once they get the multiple personalities sorted out, he'll be Data.
He'll be Data.
Yep. And Geordi, who's an expert in Data, is the one who manages to get him operational and to get him to start communicating. And so we hear Data speak, then Lore, then B4, and then Sung, like in succession. So we have like a series of these personalities come out.
We don't hear Lal.
Yeah.
No.
Which is too bad. They could get the original actress. I'm sure she was young. I'm sure she's still alive. She could do a little bit of voice work for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And they kind of tease out of him. Like they think that he's only referring to Picard, who's standing in front of him. And
the new model has holographic projector eyes.
Yes.
Well, that seems like an obvious.
That's like creepy.
Well, at least when he does a presentation, he could do his own PowerPoint slides.
Yeah. Next
so
slide.
So they're saying to him,
Yeah,
what did the Changeling steal? And he keeps saying Jean-Luc Picard. And they think he's just responding to the captain, but he's actually telling them the answer. They stole Jean-Luc Picard. Finally, he turns on his creepy projector eyes and conjures an image of Picard's human remains. They look like they're in a state of they're cryogenically frozen or something.
Mm.
And they're going, oh, they stole his human remains. Cool.
So what would they want with Picard's human remains?
And Picard's son.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it the implants, the Borg implants? Perhaps.
That seems like the easy answer, but the fact that they want Jack doesn't quite play that, unless they want to say that somehow Jack inherited the implants as well.
Or Jack is biologically compatible with them, maybe?
It could be biological compatibility. There's obviously some kind of genetic and or psychological conditioning that's happening here with Picard and Jack in their past that's essential to the plan, but they haven't told us what it is yet.
Well, it's it seems like, Picard is supposedly free from implants. Like all of them have been removed. There's no more Borg in him, but yet he can still hear the Borg, which we see like in First Contact. So maybe they're trying to figure that out, how he can still have that connection without any actual noticeable implants. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Whatever it is, it needs to be big, because they've set this up as whatever they really stole was a weapon that's more important. And Shaw, I think, has a line of even like, it must be a weapon that's 10 times worse than the portal gun.
Yeah.
So whatever their plan is, Picard's body and Jack are essential to making a weapon that is 10 times more impressive than the portal gun.
Mm-hmm.
So listener Eric wrote in, it's not part of our feedback, but he wrote in, his theory is that the conspiracy bugs are still involved and that they've infected the changelings and that they're somehow involved in this, and that it's the Borg implants that are key to this, because maybe they want, if the conspiracy bugs can get control of the Borg, perhaps that would be a big deal. It would be
interesting if that was the plan to, or I from what I've seen, so some fans have apparently been given access to the full series before it aired. And according to them, while they signed NDAs, I guess, so they can't say a lot, but they've indicated the ones I've seen that the conspiracy bugs are not involved.
Okay.
But it could be that the plan is to use Picard's remains somehow as Borg stuff, and to seize control of the Borg. That would be interesting. It would kind of cut against the writing decisions they made last season, where they had some of the Borg join the Federation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if I had a guess, given that Jack has some kind of super soldier programming,
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that, and it could be Borg implants. Maybe they're going to turn ordinary people into super soldiers and burn down the Federation.
Right. Maybe Jack is actually a Section 31 project to create a super soldier next gen or something.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out, obviously. Yeah, we get a couple more episodes.
four more episodes to resolve this, so.
Yep. So any other notes from this episode that you want to cover before we go into our feedback?
Well, of course, we got to do the final scene. Is that actually Deanna Troi?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I bet, yes.
We see Riker, he's brought onto Vadic's ship, and he's not going to talk until he sees Troi, and she's the last one. Last scene you see is her crying in this holding cell. Is it really her? And we know that, and Riker knows that Vadic is a changeling, so I have a feeling, at least at the start, they're going to do the "Are you really her?" and things like that. But I don't know.
I bet it is really her. I could be mistaken, but that would be my guess.
Especially if Beverly is going to turn out to be a changeling.
Having two female changelings in the plot would be a little
from
much.
The next gen cast. Yeah, that would be too much. I think it is. I think they don't want to spin this out to every more, conspiracy theories and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
I think they're going to go straight forward.
They need to have the real Deanna in the show, and as an active character, not just as someone making a phone call. And they only have 4 episodes left, so it would, if they had it this be a Deanna changeling, it would drastically cut down the time of the real Deanna we'll get on screen.
Yeah. So I'm with that. All right. Any other final thoughts on this one?
I have one. So during when they're making their initial pitch to Geordi, and he's shutting them for help, and he's shutting them down, his other daughter, Alandra, leans down and says, "Dad, what about Hangar 12?" And he shuts that down. And they never tell us what's in Hangar 12. Now, it could be the bounty that they end up using, but they don't establish that. And so I want payoff on Hangar 12. I want to know what's in Hangar 12 and what she was proposing, so we may get follow-up on that.
Right. And by calling it a hangar sounds more like something inside instead of a parking spot. That it's a spot inside of the station itself that they can pull the Titan into, or there's something in there that they can use in the process. So one thing that they mention, and the reason why Geordi's not happy about them being there, is he mentions that all the ships are interconnected. So in other words, all the ships are now Internet of Technology devices that phone home all the time, and they contact each other.
It's like, okay, you've got all your ships on a Wi-Fi network. Number one, hasn't that been the case always? And number two, turn off your router.
Yep.
If you're hiding, turn off your router.
Yeah.
Right.
At a minimum, you would think the ships would have had, and we know they do, friend or foe devices.
Yeah.
Well, and this goes back to last season when it was all the Borg tech they installed that with internetworked everything and made it a problem. Like after that, you didn't disconnect it.
that might be a reference to this too. I mean,
they should have. Yeah, it also kind of reminds me of Battlestar Galactica and that whole problem.
Well, it's like, didn't you guys watch Battlestar Galactica? If your ships are networked, it's a vulnerability.
Yep.
That's right.
You need the ability to turn off the network.
Right. Yep. All right, so let's move on to our listener feedback. And our first feedback is some more general feedback, goes all the way back to the beginning of Secrets of Star Trek. And this comes from Yeah. This comes from Love Spock's Bangs on Twitter, who writes, I just finished Secrets of Star Trek number 13 from September 2018.
That was the first episode that the three of us did.
That's right. It was on being Star Trek fans. We were talking about being fans and getting started. Fun is she says, fun to hear Dom speculate on the potential for a new show centered around Picard. Nailed it, Dom, which is nice. But it was a very passing reference. I want to point out that at 47 minutes of that episode, Jimmy predicts the plot of the last 3 seasons of Discovery, a leap into the 30th century where there's been a collapse of civilization. So good job on that one, Jimmy.
It was obvious to me.
Just didn't get the USS Emotional Discovery part.
That was our worst nightmares. So then on last episode, which was Imposters, Wayne M via YouTube writes, love you guys. I'll always look forward to hearing these talks post Picard. Also look forward to the rest of the next gen movies to be talked about. Yes. And we will get to those. Yep. Once these seasons are done of the new stuff. And then on today's episode, we got some feedback in advance on The Bounty. Chris S. sent an email. Still enjoying Picard, but The Bounty was probably my least favorite episode. We were bombarded with fan service. The Geordi character arc felt like a multi-episode plot crammed into the A-plot. And overall, it just felt like an episode that needed to introduce and or move all the characters into position for the stretch run of the season. Still loving the show and not complaining. Just an episode I'd rate as a B rather than A. However, I did chuckle at seeing James T. Kirk's remains preserved at Daystrom Station. Poor Picard had to drag his body up that mountain and bury him only to have his labor undone by Section 31.
I'm telling you, it was a signal for Section 31. Jack obviously has super soldier training. Section 31 has Picard's body. Picard obviously has a deep history with Section 31, which maybe how Riker knows about them. So he for no good reason, there's no obvious reason. Oh, my friend has died. Let's drag his body up to the top of a mountain and put rocks on it. Okay, that was a signal. Come on, don't be sheeple. It's all a signal to Section 31.
So Chris continues, I also have to give the show credit for teasing Moriarty as a main villain, only to have him basically be a cameo. Yep. And then a question for you all. In general, are these numerous callbacks to other Trek series all just Easter eggs for the fans or fan service? Or is there a Chekhov's gun hiding in plain sight? Of course, meaning the playwright, not the TOS character. I also wonder if the Enterprise D will return in some fashion. It's referenced in the bar in the first episode, and Shaw joked about it later. Again, hard to tell what's an Easter egg and what's a clue that will be paid off later. Finally, one of the few redeeming aspects of Star Trek Nemesis was that they finally correctly used Troy when she was able to help them target the cloaked ship using her Betazoid skills in the final battle. I wonder if they'll do the same thing, something similar with her in this series, as they've definitely bolstered characters like Crusher and Geordi. Thanks for a great show. Looking forward to Mondays as much as Thursdays. Father Cory, you were going to say?
I will say that's one thing I have enjoyed about this series, this season, is he has thrown things in that are just pure Easter eggs. They're there just to be eye candy. Moriarty really was one of them. He was just there to kind of point to Data. Yeah, but he wasn't a major character. It wasn't even the Moriarty. This wasn't even the one that's flying around space in the little hollow cube on Picard's desk. This was an image of him. But there's been other.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, but there's been lots of other Easter eggs. I want to say that the Enterprise D was merely an Easter egg. It was just they wanted that line about nobody wanted the fat one,
right?
Right. And because there's half the D is gone. All you have at best you got the saucer section is left. If they did recover
it was smashed up.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't think the D will come back. Maybe we'll see the F, because supposedly the Enterprise F is out there now at this time.
Jim?
So I think that including Moriarty in the trailers for this season was, very stimulating for fans. It's like, oh wow, he's coming back. And it did tend to convey the impression he was going to be a major villain, which would have been really cool. But trailers are made by publicity departments, not by the showrunners. And so I think, and their job is to get people to watch, not to keep them from being disappointed when they watch. So I think that the publicity department did do a bit of a disservice by featuring Moriarty in that way. It would have been better for him to be a surprise. And then we'd all have the, ooh, it's Moriarty when he suddenly shows up on screen, and we wouldn't have expectations of him being a major villain based on the trailers. But the job of trailers is to get people to watch. When there was something else connected with that.
The Easter eggs?
Oh, yeah, the Easter eggs. So I think a lot of these are it's just fan service, which is fine. I think there are elements that will pay off. Some things that initially were kind of Easter eggy have turned out to be central, you know, to what's happening now. And I expect that'll continue. But other than the thoughts that I and we have shared in this episode, I don't have any special insights on which of the Easter eggs are likely to be paid off. But I expect some of them will be.
See, that was part of the point. I kind of forgot to finish up with my thoughts was, you know, that he does take Easter eggs, like say the closing credits. You know, I've brought that up several times. There are elements in the closing credits that he has paid off, and some of them are actual plot issues, like
almost all of them now.
Yeah, you know, and showing things like the Fleet Museum and what ships are parked there, showing that the USS Constance being at Wolf 359. Things like that.
And the musical notes. Papa's the Weasel. Oh, I'm not a musician, but I'm assuming that's what that is.
See, actually, I've been trying to figure that out, what that is. So I'm going to have to go back and look at that. And I think you're right. I think that is actually Pop Goes the Weasel that's on the musical notes. So things like that he's done a very good job of bringing in Easter eggs. And some of them stay Easter eggs. Some of them are, you know, little cameos like Moriarty. And some of them are actually plot devices, plot elements that he pays off an episode or two later. So, and that's I give him credit for that. I mean, he's done a very good job of bringing all this in. And of course, you know, he is a Star Trek fan. That's where I mentioned, you know, that little throwaway line in Relics that he then pays off at the Fleet Museum.
You know, this is the final season of Picard. This is essentially going to the end of Next Gen, you know, as far as we know, as far as they said. And so this could be just bringing together all of the things we love from Next Gen into one final goodbye, you know, and all of these big elements. And that's what the Easter eggs probably are for in many cases, is we're going to be bringing together those bits and pieces that we remember most. We had a reference to Darmok and Jalad already, you know. I'm going to guess we've already seen the flute, by the way, the flute when he had that
very early on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this season we're getting a lot of Easter eggs that have to do with just closing it out, you know, bringing us back around. The Pop Goes the Weasel thing, you know. Yeah. So I think that's part of it too. Just closing things out.
Well, I don't think the door is fully closed, but
no.
Yeah.
And should say again, I know I think each of us have said this at least once. Star Trek Titan win.
Yeah, right.
I haven't said that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, Dom and I have.
Yeah. Well, the fans were able to do that for Strange New Worlds. Maybe we can get it done for Star Trek Titan.
Or Worf and Rafi.
Or Worf and Rafi. I know. I want more Worf. I'd rather have
the Titan. If they're going to do a new series, let's have.
I would be up for. I would be up for Star Trek Titan if Shaw is the captain.
Yes, exactly. All right, I think we should wrap things up there. We want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Mark B, Nellie B, Lynn Z, Pat D, and Laura M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. That's it from us. What did you think of The Bounty? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord.
Let us know if the bounty made you want to mutiny.
Yes. No mutinies on my bounty. You can now watch The Secrets of Star Trek in video on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next new episode of Picard called Dominion. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, and kapla.
And Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, we're all going to die. Of course.